Good afternoon, Chris, Darlene, Kathy,
Hi, Aaron.
Deb.
Hi, Erin. Hi, Chris. Hi, Deb.
We have two meeting links floating out there again.
Yeah.
We need to streamline this somehow.
Yeah, I think Frank just deleted the second one, so now we only have one.
Yeah, it's every month we're having this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we cleared up. I think we got one now, so we'll make sure we just have one going forward.
Okay, we have everybody but Paul.
Yeah, the only one we're missing is Paul at this point.
Okay. Well, we have a quorum. Let's go ahead for the sake of time here. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order for the June meeting in the City of Erie Land Bank. And let it be noted that the meeting is being taped for recorded for the sake of minutes. To get started, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda and minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Deb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Aaron, do we have any
Good
citizens?
afternoon. I can't hear anyone.
Hi, Kathy. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Aaron, did we have any citizens to be heard?
No one that had requested to speak. The couple people had requested the link to the meeting. We have one person as an attendee, but they're showing no indication of wanting to speak.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on then, Aaron, to report of the executive director.
All right, so I sent you out the updates on work plan one. Like you all know, the only property hanging out there is 422 Poplar Street. That property, Gene finally received the original copy to be filed with the court, so we can get that just compensation taken care of on that one on Friday. So we'll be sending out the agreement to the lady who wants to purchase that property so that we can execute new agreements and update all the dates and move forward with finally conveying that last property on that plan. So hopefully in the next month, we'll have that work plan one pretty much taken care of other than the side lots. Work plan two, we're working on, we got deeds ready for the 2606 Jackson. So that one will be ready to convey over as that, developer's agreement to the purchaser on that property. Other than that, we're, still trying to work through finishing up a couple side lot sales and then still trying to convey those lots. Then on to the 2021 work plan. The only thing there, let's see, so last week we got the approval from the Redevelopment Authority Board to move forward, move forward with the eminent domain actions against the 18 properties identified to be taken by the Redevelopment Authority. So that has been sent over to Attorney Sundberg's office, and we have gotten back all of the appraisals for the properties with the exception of 708 Payne, the commercial property. We're still waiting to receive that appraisal from the appraisal company. Of course, since commercial, they of course said it's going to take a little bit longer. So, but those are all ready to go. So here, in the next few weeks, we should be moving forward with getting all that stuff filed through the Redevelopment Authority to start that process. So that's my update as far as those three plans go. Chris.
Aaron, I do have a quick question, and I know we've talked about this property a few times. Can you remind me again what with Jackson Avenue, what is it that's caused it to drag out this long?
Jackson, it really hadn't drug out. It was waiting on anybody. We had it up for offers for a while. It was the biggest draw. We were waiting on to get some offers on the property, and then it was really just getting the agreement back and then getting it over to Attorney Sundberg's office and getting the purchaser and that whether he was going to have an attorney on his behalf or work with
Okay.
our solicitor's office or whatever. So they finally got that figured out and they're moving forward. So we have those deeds. We'll have those deeds here hopefully this afternoon to be signed.
Okay, good. Is that the one that was
Yeah,
like
Chris
really
is.
full? Yeah,
Yes. Mhm.
okay.
It's like a hoarding situation, correct,
Yeah,
Aaron?
it's coming back to me now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They really couldn't assess it or evaluate it because they
Yeah.
really couldn't get through the house. Yeah.
Couldn't get in there. Okay, because that address has been hanging out there, and I remember that was the initial hurdle. But okay, good. Thank you. On to the solicitor's report. Was Gene going to join us? Do we need to?
Gene had said he was going to join. He had an appointment at 12:15. So yeah, he was going to try to get back and get on. So that he sent me over a report that I can give on his behalf. Let's see.
Do you want to move?
We can
Do you
move
want
on.
to move on?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, we'll circle back on that. Let's move to unfinished business and new business.
Okay. So I sent you guys the 2020 audit, and we have Amy Evans from the auditing firm here that can go over it briefly for you guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron. Hello, everyone. As Aaron said, my name is Amy Evans. I was the in-charge accountant on the audit. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make sure first.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to go over just a brief overview of the report and then the numbers. And if anybody has any questions, please let me know. If I don't know the answer, I will do my best to get back to you via Aaron or Kelly as soon as possible. But if you, I think you all have a copy of that report. If you look at page 3, that's where I like to start. This is the verbiage for our auditor's report, and things have changed just a little bit. The auditor's opinion is actually in the very beginning of the report. So we just tell you that we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the general fund of the land bank for the year ended December 31st of 2020. And in our opinion, those financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the general fund as of 12/31 of 2020. Basically what that means is this is a clean opinion. So everything went well within our audit. We did conduct our audit in accordance with auditing standards. So those are just the standards that we have to go by when we complete an audit. And then, throughout the rest of that letter, it tells you the responsibilities of management. So the responsibilities of the management for the land bank is the preparation and fair presentation of those financial statements. And as we said above, that was a clean opinion that we issued. And then our responsibilities are listed on page 4. And as I said, again, we had a clean opinion. We didn't have any issues with our audit. So if nobody has any questions on our audit report, I'll get into the numbers a little bit, which is on page 7. So you see that our total assets for the land bank are just over 320,000. The majority of the assets are in those properties held for sale. And I'm sure we will talk about that just a little bit. We have a detail of those in the notes to the financial statements. Again, liabilities and fund balance. Liabilities were 280,724, and then the fund balance is 39,436 equals that 320,160. So those two numbers match there. Moving on to our profit and loss, our revenues or statement of revenues and expenditures. Our total revenues were 181,000. And our total expenditures were 153,000. So we actually had net income again in the current year of just over 28,000. So if I remember correctly, that was a little bit better than it was last year. So things are moving along pretty well. Does anybody have any questions on the numbers before I get into some of those notes?
Amy, if I could real quickly, the
Yes,
unassigned on the balance sheet, year end 2020, the unassigned amount of 39,436. I want to make sure I'm kind of thinking about this the right way. So that really is, could be assigned to the new work plan moving forward. Is that, I'm trying to get, I'm
So
sorry.
unassigned, so there's different levels of fund balance. Unassigned or unrestricted would be what it was called. That just means that it's not specifically assigned or restricted to, say, a specific project or work plan or something like that. If you wanted to do that, if you wanted to assign or restrict a specific percentage or a dollar amount or something like that, you guys would have to do that, as a resolution ordinance. I'm not sure, it would be something that the board would have to agree on. And it would go into the minutes, and then we would change that. So that would be split, where it said fund balance, it would stay restricted and unrestricted,
So
or
from
assigned and unassigned.
okay, so from an accounting perspective, from your professional opinion, appropriating that to upcoming year fund balance, would that be an appropriate use for that? As opposed to leaving it unassigned? Because to me, we would want to appropriate that either to an upcoming work plan, appropriate it to an upcoming fiscal budget, not just leave it unassigned. Does that make sense from your accounting perspective?
It does. I completely understand what you're saying. Most of our clients who do that would be larger governmental agencies like school districts or municipalities, things like that.
That's where I'm getting it. That's where I'm getting it too, is because many years ago, I did the city's budget way back. And when we would have any amount left, I would label it appropriate to fund balance going into the next year so that it tried to keep from evaporating. And so if we ended the year with 150, 200,000, it would actually balance as an expenditure and appropriation to the upcoming fund balance.
Right. And that's exactly what's happening here. So you're absolutely right on that. It's just labeled as unassigned. So if you wanted to say that, you were always going to set aside 25,000 for, another work plan or something like that, we definitely could do that. There would just need to be some sort of accounting or reconciliation of how we would draw off of that. Does that make sense? So if you appropriated 25,000, say, to work plan 2, I'm just making this up from what Aaron was saying. Once you start utilizing things for work plan 2, we would just need to know how those restrictions would change.
Right.
And maybe the 25,000 would stay there for, years, or, maybe it would just be a year at a time. Then I don't know if you want to assign it to work plan 1, work plan 2, or different years or whatever.
Well, I think it's a good, and we can have that discussion internally, but
yeah,
I think it's a good habit to get into when you estimate your budget for the coming year. You actually estimate a very small percentage to be appropriated to the following year, if you can get into that habit.
Right.
So that you're always rolling a certain amount over, and it's not just hanging out there, that you're actually assigning it to something. And I know in a lot of ways materially we're doing this, but
right, you are. It's just presentation.
Yeah.
And knowing that specific dollar amount is, assigned or appropriated to a specific year or plan, or, whatever you want to call that.
Right, because right now it would be easier to move these funds to another expenditure, and I think it's a good habit if we can create whatever we get through the year with, that we get in the habit of appropriating that to a specific use.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that because the land bank is still fairly new, so I think that in the first year or two, that was probably a little bit more difficult. I don't think you had a lot of funds to be able to do that. But now that you're growing that, just looking at last year's net income, it was only $4,900.
Yeah.
This year's net income, $28,000. So yes, it does make sense to start thinking about that. Whether you start that this year or next year, or whatever, I don't think that's a bad idea.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, I just wanted to touch on some of those notes. Like I said, if we, as I noted before, that properties held for sale under the assets was, the largest amount of the assets. And we noted that under note 4, you'll see the detail of that. So we basically took our beginning balance from last year's financial statements, added those adjustments or any additions, any properties that were purchased, and then subtracted those sales, and you'll see that that number matches. So I just wanted to point that out. And then note 5, I don't know if anybody looked at this and wondered about this. It was something that we were required to put into our audit reports through 12/31 of 2020, because really didn't know exactly what was going to continue to happen with the pandemic. Now that things are starting to, kind of slow down with that, and we kind of know what's happening, things are opening up, and it's not really affecting business, we'll be removing that. So I don't think that you'll be seeing that note next year. I just wanted to point that out. I know I've had a lot of people ask me about that note when I've done other presentations. So, and then the last thing that I always like to say is it was, a pleasure working with Aaron and Kelly. I know there was transition in 2020. That can be difficult sometimes, but they worked, very well with us and the audit team. We didn't encounter any problems or issues. There were no disagreements. There was nothing that we talked about that we, couldn't come to an agreement on. So it was a pleasure working with them, and I appreciate all of their help with this audit.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions then on the audited statements, thank you again for taking the time to explain that with us. And Aaron, I guess we can go ahead and move ahead then with your next item.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So as you guys are aware, in the 2021 work plan, we had allocated $150,000 for the demolition, to assist with the demolition of the Quinn T site. Chris and I had talked a couple of weeks back that now there's a need to take care of the overhead pedestrian bridge at EMI sooner than anticipated, and that we would leave it up to the board to decide that we could reallocate that money, and I will present it to, if that is the board's choice, to allocate that $150,000 to demo that pedestrian bridge at EMI. Then I will present that to the Erie County Land Bank Board to get their final approval on switching that money over and allowing us to allocate that toward that demolition cost.
So Aaron, I can speak to this for a couple of minutes if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the County Redevelopment Authority's perspective, we started having some vandalism issues over there. Kids were getting up in the skywalk there, shattering out the windows, glass falling onto 12th Street. And so we've made a pivot to try to get the skywalk or sky bridge, whatever you want to call it, demoed as soon as possible. Permits have already been submitted to PennDOT. Since that is a state road, we need their approval. We have urban engineers we're working with on that. So we've already put the wheels in motion. But to us, that's clearly a current a danger, a public danger. We can't have people up there vandalizing for their sake and for others. So from the county's perspective, for the redevelopment authority's perspective, we are asking to move that 150 over to EMI. Both properties, the total demo, we wouldn't be ready for a while yet anyways. There's some hazardous materials that are going to be removed from both sites in the coming months. We can't move forward until that is done and those are tested. So it's our hope to have that sky bridge down this year.
I had a general question about the work with the County Redevelopment Authority, Chris or Aaron. Is there an agreement in place of how these transactions will be handled? Maybe it predates me, or is it all just in a work plan, or how does that work with the county or the city redevelopment authority, the land bank, and the county redevelopment authority?
Well, we present a request, and then we decide if we want to include that in a work plan moving forward. So the initial thought was we would attack Quinn T first, and that's still where we're leaning, but this just came from a discussion of whether or not we felt it was an appropriate use. And so that's how the 150 was incorporated into the work plan.
And then is it just it's a grant from the land bank to the county redevelopment authority, or does the land bank handle, I mean, they wouldn't handle the actual deconstruction of that bridge and pay for it?
No, it's just helping to fund the demo.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, how will this affect the Quinty, or Aaron? How will this affect the Quinty? Will it slow that project down at all with the transfer of the 150,000?
I don't believe it will. We still have a lot of material that needs to be removed and tested in the coming months. And so we're going to be seeking various types of funding sources for that property. The 150 would have helped, but that's going to far exceed 150. Whereas with the skywalk, right now our best estimate is going to be somewhere 2 to 225 to get that down, and it's an immediate need. So knowing that even with those funds set aside, it's not really expediting that timeline any until we can get this testing done. We need to address the immediate concern, and that's a safety concern of 12th Street.
One more question, Chris. So is this a reimbursement? You produce some sort of invoice to the land bank?
Yeah, we're gonna have invoice. We're gonna have an estimate, a formal estimate. We've reached out to, I believe, 5 contractors. So there'll be an estimate that's produced.
Okay.
We're also working with Erie Plating because it's attached to Erie Plating's building. So there's multiple pieces to that.
Chris, we got Paul Gamble. He's finally was able to log in. If he comes on, we might just want to update him on what we're talking about, just so he has the ability to vote on it. Can you hear us, Paul?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Why is it 2 minutes before a meeting, did someone send out that it was changed?
Yeah, there was an issue with that, and we had 2 meetings floating around, and there was some confusion we had tried to clear up, and unfortunately it didn't happen until right before.
All right.
But Paul, we're on the unfinished business section of it, and we were just discussing a change to the 2021 work plan to reallocate the 150 that we had designated in the plan to Quinn T to EMI to demolish the pedestrian bridge over 12th Street due to safety concerns.
So hi, Paul, it's Chris. I had given a brief explanation of some of that work right before you got on. So I'll just kind of give you the quick version here. Essentially what we've had is we've had an individual or individuals break in there. They're getting up in the skywalk. They're doing vandalism, and they're causing a safety issue for traffic on 12th Street. We've had glass get showered down onto 12th Street. So we feel that we need to address that skywalk as soon as we can. So That's why there's a request to move the 150 from Quinn T to EMI. Quinn T is still undergoing some testing. There's some material that needs to be removed, so it's not going to be ready for demo in the next couple of months regardless. So we feel that we need to address what's in the short term, what's the biggest concern here.
I got a question.
Yep.
Could you hear me?
Yes.
So how will this affect the affect the demolition on 16th and French?
I don't see
When
it
you're-
affecting. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
you're taking 150,000 out of the project. So will this delay that project at all? Because I mean, I understand about the breaking in and the vandalism, but we have that same problem with squatters and other people on 16th and French as well.
Yeah. I don't believe 150 is going to keep us from moving forward on Quinn T. The numbers that we're starting to see are much higher for that to happen. So we're seeking some other funding sources. And so that in combination with, again, that there's testing and some material that needs to be removed before we're even allowed to begin demo, really makes us want to move on what is the most pressing issue. So I don't see it slowing down Quinn T. It's really up to some of the tests we're waiting on, environmental tests and material removal. That's what we have to work through.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Yep.
All right, Chris, do you want to do a vote to, get the approval for me to request this to our budget at Erie County Land Bank?
If there are no other questions or comments, then of course I will sit this out and abstain. So if the vice chair would want to call for a vote, I'm going to abstain from this, being that I'm involved on the demolition side.
All right, so do we need to get a motion to move forward with this, or are we just, okay, so at this time, I would need a motion to move forward with the transfer of moving the money from Quinn T to EMI for $150,000.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And
Any
I
abstentions?
and I abstain.
Okay.
I'm voting no, Debbie.
Did you say no, Paul? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. All right, so the ayes actually have it. It's
3-1.
passed.
All right, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so moving on, property disposition. Back in November, we presented a proposal from a neighboring property owner to purchase the side lot at 502 Dunn. They live at 508. You may recall that the board had requested that the owner not be able to purchase the property since they were delinquent in their taxes. And that emails had been exchanged with them. They were aware of that. They were sent an agreement. They never returned the agreement with the deposit, which, would have held the property. At that time, we had no other offers on the property to purchase it. So, however, that did change last month, early in April. I think it was the end of April. I got this proposal from basically the neighboring property owner on the other side of Fifth Street. So the property, it's not an adjoining property owner, but he lives on basically the opposite corner from this vacant lot. He requested to purchase the lot. I spoke with The Perez's about their taxes. They're currently delinquent in excess of $4,000. They were going to talk about it and get back to me. They have not, so I placed it on the agenda for the board to approve the proposal to purchase the lot by Mr. Klink at 422 Dunn for $1,200. And he is current on his taxes, his water, sewer, garbage, and that's really the only property he owns is at 422 Dunn.
Yeah, everything I saw from him. So,
Chris, you broke up and I didn't actually hear what you said. Could you repeat what you said?
no, I was just going to say he's current on everything, as Aaron said, because I looked at it as well. So, I mean, I think it's probably something that we ought to, I would support.
I had a question for Aaron. Maybe we brought this up last time, I can't remember. But the future use of that lot, I noticed in his description, he was thinking of building a garage, which I think since it's across the street, he wouldn't be able to do that. Is there a clause, or I think maybe we even talked about the zoning officer signing off on things like that, but just up as a point of,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say there is language in the agreement that says that any alterations or additions to the property have to be approved by the city zoning office or applicable department for them to proceed with any additions to the property. So they would certainly have to get approval to build a garage, which more than likely would not happen.
And that, it might be, it's not in there, I'm sorry, get it close enough for us to sort of absolve ourselves from any indication that we support the reuse proposal or something akin to that. So we're not saying, yeah, you can go ahead and use it as a garage. Just maybe in the future we can, I'm again, if I haven't looked at the language, but it just concerns me when they say something like that and we convey the property without having some sort of absolving ourselves of any support of the reuse of that property.
No, I agree with you. And I think, it seems to be majority of these proposals, they seem to put that they're going to build something on it. I don't know if they do it in the fact that they, it may help their case in the fact that we might think it's getting more tax revenue or something out of the deal. But, most of the people tend to say they're going to build something when we know it's not really the case.
Yeah, I don't know how much we ought to be getting involved with trying to determine their future, because like you said, a lot of times they probably don't do that, but I don't think that's our role to determine if it's going to be eligible. We should just take the approach that, we can't ensure that this will be allowed. That's up to you. It's up to the code office, up to zoning. Our job is to vet them to see if they should be able to buy this lot, but not necessarily determine right now if they'll eventually get approval or not. As long as they understand going into this that we're not suggesting that this is going to be eligible. So I guess I don't want to overthink this either. I mean, this is not the place where we start to determine eligible projects down the road, unless others feel differently. But
I'm just reading that now that I've had a chance. I'm reading the application. It says offers proposing any type of construction, and he is proposing a garage at some point, will be required to provide additional information to demonstrate financial capacity to undertake it. It seems to almost read like what you're saying, Chris, in that regard. I'm throwing up a word of caution because I see that it might allude to the fact that we are signing off on the use, but we certainly don't want to do that.
Right. I just don't want us to start getting tangled with questions of zoning, questions of design, questions. I mean, because that could go on. I mean,
Yes.
And none of us here are prepared to make those determinations. So we kind of have to have a cutoff here.
Yeah, I think we might want to take a look at that wording. Maybe not for this case, 'cause he's really wanting to use it as a garden at first. But I think we certainly, wouldn't want to sign off on the proposed future use as a garage. I think that's not the purview of the land bank.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, we can look at changing the language there. And I
Just
think a
leave it.
lot of additions garages would be definitely for neighboring or adjoining property where they could, after 5 years, combine the lots and build on the property.
Yeah.
So then, where does that put us today then with his request? Are you saying you want that stripped out of any mention of garage, or we approve the request, wording it somehow that we're strictly approving the request to buy the lot? That in no way are we suggesting we support.
Or approving the reuse, yeah, we're
Right.
not.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
maybe-
I guess I don't want to delay this.
I don't.
Okay.
I think, you're right, Chris, we don't delay it. We just clarify it in the motion. If you want to do it that way.
Okay. All right, let's do it that way. Then Kathy, do you want to make a motion then, the way that you would like to see it worded?
No, I guess I should do that, right? I move to approve the proposal by Mr., is it Klink?
Yes, Clink.
Klink to purchase 502 Dunn Boulevard for his, but excluding any support for the reuse of the property. It is not in the purview of the land bank to make that determination. But with that exclusion, I propose, or I support the purchase of the lot.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. And before we move on, Kathy, is there a paragraph that you would be willing to produce that we could incorporate into this? Because it's a valid point. I just don't want to get hung up on it every time we
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, I think it's just rewording that one section a little bit. It was, I think it was meant to suggest that they had to get zoning approval, perhaps even before purchasing the lot, but maybe just suggesting that they check with the zoning officer before the, reuse can occur, something to that effect. I'm not going to do it on a Monday, I can assure you, but I'll work on it with Aaron.
Yeah, we'll look at that. All right, so moving on, advertisement of properties. I know last month we had talked about, different ways we could look at getting a little bit more activity on the properties and really letting people know the land bank is in their neighborhood. So we explored some options as far as pricing on some signage for the lots. We got a couple different prices. Really, the first one would be some window signs to place into the properties once we do transfer them over. We acquire them and then transfer them to the land bank, just so people know that the land bank is involved and some action will be taking place on that property. With these 18 coming on board, we take ownership and it may be 2, 3, 4 months before something happens. So that just so that neighbors know the land bank is involved. And then some additional, some bandit signs, or those H plastic cardboard signs for the lots after the demolition, proposing that the lot is available, or, for the properties we do plan to offer for rehabilitation agreements, that those are available for offers, just so that, it's a little more visible than posting it on our website or to our list of developers or on the Redevelopment Authority's Facebook page. So we looked at that, price for 50 signs across the board for all of that I spoke of is just over $500, which I don't feel is too far off utilizing, a local sign company to execute that. Didn't know if anybody had any questions, thoughts, concerns.
I just have, Chris, going back. Ooh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Going back to what you were saying earlier about our unassigned fund balance, is this an appropriate place for us to maybe shift some of that towards an advertising budget? Have that be part of our land bank?
I think it could, and I don't want to derail us or take us too far off the path today, but I think we should have a discussion of how we handle what's left at the end of a fiscal year, how we should address that. Because I'm not suggesting that we lock all of that into an appropriation to a work plan, but I also don't want to just leave it all out there. Maybe it's half of it, just out of habit, half of whatever remains is automatically appropriated to forthcoming work plan, and maybe the rest of it is unanticipated expenditures. But I would like to just rein that in a little bit. They're still fairly modest numbers, but we should figure out how we want to address that. So yes, I mean, that's something that I think, we're talking $500. There's a need to get to try to advertise a little more, have people notice. We talked last month about, you could drive by some of these properties and never know what the situation is. So, a sign is not the only answer and the final answer, but it's going to help. So, I mean, I would support that. So, Aaron, are you looking for us to, is this something we can approve this month? Are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, if you could approve that, that'd be great. Then we can get it done, and we can have them ready for as soon as we acquire those properties and start getting those distributed and just out there.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on that, or suggestions or concerns? Hearing none, then I would make a motion that we approve the expenditure for signs and other advertising material for an amount not to exceed 500.
It's $513.50, Chris. So if you could do.
Okay. I guess $13. Okay. So for an amount of $513.50. Need a second?
And I'll second that motion.
Okay. Thank you, Darlene. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, Aaron, you just squeaked through that extra $13. Give me a
All right. Great. Then I'll take that out of my wallet. I did have one other thing just to bring up to you guys. We have had some requests lately for donation of properties. I know I'm not sure if I brought up last month. We were in conversation with a Miss Franco out of Staten Island. She has a blighted property at 2236 Warfel Avenue. She owes back taxes on it. She says there's no other mortgages on it. Of course, we haven't spent any money on it as far as a title search yet, but she did return the real estate donation agreement, basically acknowledging that she is in agreement to donate it to the land bank if that's what we wanted, if we wanted to accept it at this point. Of course, and I'm not going to put it in front of you to do anything with until we were to do a title search and make sure. And of course, she would have to bring all of the taxes current in order for us to do that, so that there was no other costs incurred there. But then I did meet with a lady this morning at a house on Cochran Street in the 2600 block. Another situation where her and her husband had bought the property and they got divorced, and now she's stuck with it and doesn't want it anymore. It's basically got a big hole in the roof down through. So it's a demo candidate. It's certainly nothing that could be rehabbed, but in no uncertain terms, she's basically just going to let it sit there until somebody does something with it. And at this point, code enforcement has nothing on the property. So we'd be looking at probably 2 years before we'd be able to take any action on it through blighted property or the redevelopment authority. So I've told both of them in both cases that right now we're still early on in the work plan. We're not aware of how much excess funding there may be, if our demos come in less or, acquisition costs come in less, if we would have room. So, there was no anticipation that we would be able to do anything with these two properties at this time, but I just wanted to put it in front of you, open it up for any discussion as far as how you would like to proceed with those, going forward. We just want to table them and hold them, or what your thoughts would be.
Aaron, my initial thought was a lot of feedback. My initial thought is that, and this goes back to the accounting and the budget question, that we ought to have some mechanism built in to anticipate this, because this is probably going to be ongoing, where you may have some folks each year reach out to you. And from a practical matter, assuming that there aren't a lot of liens on the property, the title is clear, we should be stepping in earlier rather than later to get these back on the tax roll sooner. It doesn't do any of us any good to have to go through a 2 or 3 year process. We've lost the tax revenue. Properties have become worse. I mean, if we could step in early, and it's not a large expenditure for us, it's better for everybody, but we do need to build that into our budget. So, maybe that's an appropriate use for unassigned revenues where, they're appropriated to the upcoming year's work plan for, unanticipated projects, because there's always going to be an unanticipated project. And at least we'll have hopefully some funding set aside that we can move on something like that. So I don't know what other thoughts would be, but
Chris, I have a thought on that. Yes, for blighted properties, but I also think we should look into and consider blighted neighborhoods and prioritize any properties that we do take over. I'd hate to see this become a way of some property owners just dumping properties down on the land bank, and there should be some priorities set for consideration, especially in the neighborhoods where developments are currently underway. Should have a higher priority than, say, a neighborhood where there isn't anything going on and the owner just can't afford to upkeep the property anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Do you see that mechanism being this form, where we just go, case by case, we evaluate if this were to come up? Or, I get, we can talk about this at another meeting. I don't mean to belabor it, but it really ties into how we budget as well. They're all
Right.
kind of connected here.
Chris, I'm of course not on the land bank, but I'm wondering if this, and I know the land bank doesn't have a lot of people on it, but it seems to me this might be the kind of thing where you would want a multidisciplinary ad hoc committee to come together, because that woman from Staten Island has that property, the former Starlight Hotel, which is on the Blighted Property Review Committee. I mean, I think you need to have criteria, and you need to see if they could. I mean, are there other partners who might take this? I share Paul's concern that all of a sudden we might have
Come here,
somebody say,
Renee.
oh, I can get rid of this. So I think if you put together something and you could come back with a recommendation, Land Bank Redevelopment Authority, Blighted Property Review Committee, and possibly somebody from a neighborhood organization, without making it too big and unwieldy. I think if you had criteria, it could be a good thing, but it also seems to have some red flags. So, that woman, I really wish we could dig into why she bought those properties, not on Wharfville, and then the Starlight Hotel, which has, a really sorry history of blight and, crime problems and everything. So anyhow, I don't know if you need me on a ad hoc committee, but I'd be more than happy to get together for an offline, not offline, but something just to focus in, not so much on that property, but on some criteria.
And
Well, you might have just signed yourself up there. So
Okay,
And Liz, that's a valid point. Now, that's something I wouldn't have known about the particular property owner, that she had other properties, but that would be my concern, that you would have a property owner just trying to dump property on the land bank. And at the same time, we do have some neighborhoods and projects in place where I think if there's blighted property that we would need to consider, and then you have properties that we may have taken over, and then budget-wise, we don't have monies to take over something in a revitalized or redeveloped neighborhood, it would catch us.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea, because I know, as we're developing our priority list, we work with our neighborhood groups and have one-on-one conversations with our neighborhood groups. They tell us what's happening with the properties, and it will help elevate that to our code officers. But I know, just thinking out loud, it's definitely a conversation we should dedicate some time to, because then I'm also looking at, if the property and the property owner is non-compliant, continues to buck the system or not really want to invest in the property, the cost burden of dealing with that property falls to the taxpayers, because they're the ones who have to pay the code officers to take the property owner to the DJ and eventually get it in front of the blighted property review committee, and then eventually to the land bank. That there's a cost to that time that's directly held by the taxpayers of the city. So trying to intervene early, there's actually a benefit to do that. But then again, I know, Liz, you're hyper cognizant, is we don't want to seem like we're giving a benefit to this property owner who's going to be challenging to work with. They're getting away from it, from having to put some resources into it. But at the end of the day, if they're walking away from the property in the end, it's going to cost us a lot more to deal with them.
Yeah, we don't want to be that go-to, but we should intervene early if it makes sense, because it is better that we do that. So I guess there's two things here. First of all, the discussion of creating a mechanism that we're in a position we can do that. That's first. We need to do that, and that's more of an accounting exercise and a budget exercise. And then it's the criteria that we use to measure whether or not we should take that property. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if maybe we kind of attack this from two pieces here. I mean, I'd be happy to work on the funding mechanism, accounting mechanism, establishing that into our budget. If there's, someone else that wants to work on, what would be a logical criteria, and so there's two pieces to this, I guess. So, I mean, this can be an ongoing conversation. We're not going to solve this today, but I'd be happy to work with anyone who wants to position us a little bit better to be able to handle this when these requests come in.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what you don't want is to be a drain on the land bank's resources to try to unload property. Or I don't know how difficult is it to take property on and then have to get liens released and back taxes taken care of. How has that worked in the past, or is it pretty quick?
It doesn't take a long. I mean, it's usually about a 3-month process if we have to petition the 3 taxing bodies to have the taxes exonerated, and the best case would be is that, any of these donation properties, we would make sure that was taken care of ahead of time, but it's neither of these properties, we don't own any other lots in the area. There's just not much use for them other than us having them at that point, and like you say, getting the burden off of the code enforcement office now is about the only plus to it, and the ability to acquire it for far less than through eminent domain or tax sale. We save ourselves some money there.
Yeah. Just
that would be part of the matrix of our decision making, like what you just started to talk about there. maybe it's contiguous with other things we're working on. Maybe it's way out here and it's just not tied into what we're doing. And so I can envision, 7 or 8 questions that we walk through and say yay or nay, and then we move on. So, but either way, I think we need to get ourselves in a position where we can at least look at something like that in the future. So.
Okay, yeah, I can work on kind of trying to put together some of the high points as far as what kind of criteria would be, beneficial to the land bank's priorities.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have. Gene messaged me, he's listening, but he can't get on to speak. So I can run through the report that he provided me, just so you guys have it, and then you can address any questions and I can get those out to you. So 2301 German Street, we closed on that property today, so that we'll have the net proceeds check in the office here shortly. 2606 Jackson, the deed is ready for signatures. So and along with 521 West 3rd Street and 702 Raspberry, which are 2 of the properties that the land bank acquired at tax sale on behalf of the R West Bayfront. So those 2 properties are ready for the deeds to be signed so that we can move forward with conveyance over to R West Bayfront. So, brief little update from Gene. So I'm sure he could have provided a little bit more detail, but we'll try to get him on next month. And how's the board feel about in-person meeting next month? Or do we want to
I'm
continue?
okay.
I would be in favor.
You're in favor of in-person, Paul and Darlene?
Yes.
Yes, I am there.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I guess I'll move toward having the land bank meeting in person with the option of the Zoom meeting for people to at least attend and listen.
Okay.
All right, awesome.
Okay, Aaron, that wraps it up for you then. So
I have
unless-
a question.
okay, hi Kathy.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. You had mentioned earlier on about 700 Payne. Is that the property that's next to Trotka's that's in disrepair?
Yes, the old bar.
Yes.
Big, yeah, the big bar. Yes.
I walked by it just today at noon, and it's still there in disrepair. So what's the status on that then? They have to wait till they get a formal how much it's worth before they tear it down?
That property has been identified on the 2021 work plan. So it is a property that the redevelopment authority is going to inquire on behalf of the land bank. However, we need to have an appraisal completed on it in order to perform the just compensation with the order. So as part of the eminent domain action, we're just waiting on the appraisal. And because it is a commercial property, it takes a little bit longer than the residential appraisals.
Okay, thank you. And what's the 830 East 25th Street? There's a blighted house that's waiting to be demolished. Do you have any information on that house? Like, why can't we try to drum up some money from somewhere to get some of these houses demolished? They're really disrupting the neighborhood. I'm getting calls all the time about people in this house and activity going on in the house and drugs and stuff like that. And it's bringing the neighbors down.
Yeah, I know, and certainly, we work closely with the Erie County Land Bank, is where the land bank gets, the majority of the funding, and we try to leverage that with grant applications. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful in at least the last 2 grant applications that were put in. We still have a grant application out there that we're waiting to be awarded, so it's a matter of just trying to, I guess, lobby with our state officials as much as we can that we need the funding in Erie, as much as other counties do. The last round, Erie County did not get anything. There are several other municipalities in the state that got funded, but we did not. So, it's just hoping and applying for grants as best we can and try to get as much money as we can to take care of them.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, Liz, looks like you were gonna raise your hand. Good to go?
Good to go. I just sent you a
Okay.
message, Chris, saying that I found one place that has a donation policy on its website. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah, we can start hitting the ground running.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was fast. Okay, if that is all for today, then I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good month.